This is the start of the Blue Earth County Board of Commissioners March 24th meeting. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we start with the agenda, Bob.
Mr. Chair, there are no changes to the agenda this morning.
Move the agenda.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against the same? It passes. Is Phil here?
We haven't seen him yet, so maybe we could do a couple of administrative service
Let's
items.
do that. Go down to, go ahead with the administrative minutes.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, the first item is the county board minutes for March 10th and March 18th. That was that special meeting.
I'll move the minutes.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against the same? That passes.
Next would be the bills for the 2 weeks indicated.
I'll move the bills.
Second.
Got a motion and a second on the bills. Any discussion? Any discussion?
I'm sorry. Excuse me, Chair. Who seconded the bills?
I did.
Thank you.
That would be Will.
Phil doesn't have that. Josh is going to
I don't have any.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against the same?
Mr. Chair, I'm just realizing now, I apologize for this, but we might want to do roll call because of the telephonic connection that we made available. I think that is one of the requirements, so maybe
Well, that's a really good idea. Thank
I
you, Bob.
apologize for not catching that sooner.
Colleen, would you like to start?
I'm Colleen Lankhammer, and I really appreciate that we're all at much more than 6 feet apart.
Kip?
Kip Runder. Will Purvis.
Mark Peepo.
And Vance Stoonberg.
And I think we should do roll call votes. So maybe with the bills here, we could do a quick roll call to just, obviously it was unanimous, but maybe we should have Jesse ask for a roll call vote.
It's a good idea. Colleen?
Aye.
Jesse will call. Right.
That's what I would propose.
Sure. Commissioner Landhamer,
Aye.
Commissioner People,
Aye.
Commissioner Curtis,
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder,
Aye.
Chair Stoneberg.
Aye.
Thank you.
And that passes.
All right, would you like to turn it over to Mr. Clausen?
I would like to turn it over to Mr. Clausen. Thanks for showing up this morning, Phil.
Absolutely. Morning, Phil. Good morning.
Morning, Phil.
We have Mr. Phil Clausen, who is our Director of Human Services, giving the Human Services report.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I do have a few action items to go over that I hope will be pretty straightforward, and then some data from our financial assistance programming, which also I think you'll find is pretty straightforward. Regarding action items, Mr. Chair, first, financial assistance. It's the fraud prevention investigation contract. It's an addendum to our current contract. The board's aware that we use Sheriff's Office personnel as an investigator to do these services. The duties are to prevent, detect, and eliminate public assistance fraud. There is a significant increase in this contract. We did ask for an increase after many years of no increase, and so they did double our allocation from $55,000 to $110,000. I think that'll benefit both the sheriff's budget as well as our own. And you'll see that that's split out prorated for the current state fiscal year, 7/1 of 19 through 6/30 of 21. And then in supportive housing, there's two contracts. The board's heard this story before, somewhat complex, but the first one is our provider contract. So we, as a provider of supportive housing, as part of the 8-county area that's listed in your narrative, receive funds, and you'll see at the bottom $417,257, which is a reduction of 1.4% from our previous allocation. And that is due, though, to good news that we are able to capture revenues, and we've improved that. So overall, we're practicing efficiently with some product there, performance measurement that's affected that, I think, in a very positive way. And the term of that contract between ourselves and Hearth Connection is 1/1/20 through 12/31/21. And then a related contract next, the regional project. This is the bigger contract where we act as a fiscal agent for the whole entire southern region. And Hearth Connection does the administrative functions. The services in the middle of the paragraph talk about what are delivered as far as intensive case management, and then the definition of long-term homelessness for individuals who are homeless for a year or more than 4 times in a 3-year period have they been homeless. And then at the very bottom, you'll see the benefits, including, and this is important to us and our workers, any kind of benefit assistance, financial assistance, behavioral, mental health supports, medical care, education, employment and training, crisis response, and parenting support. So we really do practice holistic supports in this population. And then you'll see the cycle is the same as above, $2.5 million, I guess $10,530 total. No change from the prior 2-year funding cycle, and the term, like I said, is the same of 1/1/20 through 12/31/21. Finally, also something the board's familiar with under disability services is guardianship contracts, and it also includes conservatorship. We do group these together because they are mirrored contracts. All the terms are the same. You'll see near the end of the narrative that our rate has increased by 1% for 2020 and 2% for 2021 is what's being brought before you. And the term is 1/1/20 through 12/31/21. The vendors for this important service in our community, Lutheran Social Services, Alternative Resolutions, Wings Guardianship Services, Guardianship Services LLC, and Brecka Care. And those are my action items, Mr. Chair.
All right.
This is Colleen Langhammer. I'll move the action items.
Second.
All right. And for those listening in, we place all our action items together. And if anybody wishes to pull one out, we can pull one out. But normally we vote them all together at one time. We do have a motion by Commissioner Langhammer, a second by Commissioner People.
I just have one quick question for Phil.
Any discussion?
Yeah, on the fraud prevention. Do you have an idea like what the savings have been? Have we captured some? Or
yes, Commissioner, we brought that specific information. I think we're due again here in the next month or two where I'll bring the very specific data, but we've always been not only very positive in terms of our performance, but I think more than double, almost 3 times the kind of mark that the state sets for us. So we're outperforming the measurements by quite a lot, and that's not to count those are our administrative sanctions, but then there's also been some criminal actions as well, which we previously didn't have under our own system. So working with the Sheriff's Department, they're able to bring criminal charges forward in some cases, and there's also recoveries in that.
Okay. Thank you, Phil.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Hearth Connections. I remember when we first started to work with them. It's been a long time.
Right.
A lot of consistency there.
It really has been. I will say, Commissioner, that there's been some changes in the structure where I know I've talked to the county administrator about just, is this structure going to stay forever? Because it is kind of this middleman back and forth contracting, and we've been very open. That's why I say it here, is with the department and with Hearth, saying, is this the most efficient way to manage these contracts? It definitely works. We have a great story to tell. The question always is, after decades really of efforts, are there any tweaks we'd want to make? We really haven't made any, and I'm not saying that we will. I just saying we're looking at that just to make the board aware of that. But it's a great question. We've certainly enjoyed a great relationship over time.
Interesting that the first person who ran Hearth Connection with us is now the Commissioner of Housing.
Absolutely, Jennifer, yes. Mm-hmm.
Any more discussion? All right.
Commissioner
Would you-
Landcamer,
Aye.
Commissioner Pico,
Aye.
Commissioner Purvis,
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder,
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg.
Aye. That passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have the slides from the Financial Assistance Unit. I apologize. I see that from my version, which are much cleaner, you have a version where the decimal's printed out, and I am sorry about that. We like to be very precise in human services, so we went out 4 digits beyond the decimal point. That was not intentional. I will give you the clean numbers because I have them here, but from 2018, we had, in the first slide, average monthly active caseload 8,800, and we went up just slightly, about 30 cases, 35 cases from 18 to 19, so that's really what the first slide indicates, pretty stable. I maybe will hold a comment on that and just maybe go through these and see if there's questions in general. The next slide, housing on the top, supplemental aid, these are, really 5 of the different programs. We talk at times where under financial assistance there's over 30 programs, so these are the major ones. MFIP is the third, general assistance, and then at the bottom, diversionary work program. And you'll see general stability with some slight increasing, mirroring kind of the previous slide. Nothing dramatic as far as changes go. The third slide is Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, often referred to as SNAP, and you'll see again that very slight increase from 18 to 19 numbers. And then finally, healthcare, where in 2018 there were almost 7,400 cases, and we've gone down, I think it's about a 3 to 4% reduction to 7128. And that was my only question or comment to the board, is that I think under the surface, as you all know, there's been an unstable platform through METS. And you've heard about some of these issues of late, duplicate PMI numbers, trying to get a system that works, how much time it takes to make a change in some people's program on the computer. And so we've struggled greatly under the surface, and I want to make sure I'm saying that consistently, because these look like fairly stable numbers, but even in healthcare, I can't tell you exactly what's going on there. It's gone down somewhat. The rest very stable, but it hasn't felt stable. It's been a very difficult up and down process of sorting cases and closing out cases, I think, is part of what we've done. And I think there has been slow incremental progress. I always am big on, are we getting better or worse? I think it's getting better, but slightly better. There's still some dysfunction within how the system operates. So these numbers are hard to sort through. I think if we could get to a place where we're confident that it's a picture of what's going on and then had years to show you trend lines, I don't think the trend lines are that telling right now. I think the numbers are accurate for what we have in our system. But as you know, there's lots of questions about paybacks and people that maybe got paid too much and these duplicate numbers where some people might be in the system more than once. So all those things are factors that weigh pretty heavy on us, actually. But we're muddling through it, and I think time is on our side. I don't think it's anything other than that. It's just, I think it's not right to say things are good and business as usual. I think we're trying to mop up and sort out, and that's why I'm qualifying what you're looking at today. So that's the information I had on that, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm assuming with what's going on right now, these numbers are really subject to change more than ever.
Right.
I have And it hasn't been long enough to, I would assume, to see if we're seeing a big influx.
Right, and that, Commissioner, is the other obvious thing I should have said, because that's what I thought of last night when I was looking at this report, is that, and I think what 2019 might give us is a picture, a snapshot of what was here before, obviously, the COVID issue. And I think from unemployment right through all the benefits and how people qualify and when they'll qualify, once unemployment starts to run out. I know I've mentioned at some of our work sessions that concern that we're going to see big differences over time. And the longer we get protracted out into the pandemic, the more that's going to be a dramatic bubble at some point of how it affects people in these ways, in these specific ways. Yeah.
What do you expect will happen if and when the unemployment runs out?
I think people will qualify for benefits. I know in just listening to, all the press conferences at the state and federal level, I think people, everybody stands ready to make sure that there's no limit or dramatic changes to those benefits. But I think we're going to see a huge increase in people applying and then seeing if they qualify. The hard thing, and you all know this, is that in like those 5 areas that are broken down in the one graph, and that there's really 30 programs, they all have different eligibility. And so sometimes assets become a big issue where somebody's really hurting, can't pay their mortgage, but their money's tied up in the house or in cars or whatever it might be. And they're just in a hard spot. And that's really what these benefits work best for, is those temporary, short-term issues, much like what we're looking at in a pandemic, get you through a hard time, get you back to the place that you were. So I think we're going to see huge increase, especially in those financial assistance pieces. And I think healthcare will become an issue if it gets protracted beyond the coverage of people to have healthcare. If they've had it through their employer, we'll see an increase there. I think food support, is much more of an indicator of where folks are at probably even now. That's probably the last to blip up, but I think it's a critical piece. I watch the news and see the school programs where kids are dependent on the school lunches, and I just feel like that's the front line right there, is families that don't have enough money for food. So for many families, that's a reality even before the crisis, and we have to ensure that we're doing that work. Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I'm sure we'll have a lot of discussion on this in the future.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I'll just make a comment on just in general. I know Bob and I have tried to stay in touch with Josh, and there's just a lot of information out there. And so synthesizing that information is really the hard part. It's not just sharing it or forwarding an email, but really saying, where are we at? I've asked supervisors, because really last week we were in a scramble to change that whole workforce piece, and we really went, and I shared this at a work session too, person by person, saying what's the plan for this person, that person, throughout human services. That's how we did it through our supervisors. So there was a huge amount of work to try to understand who maybe could work from home, who didn't want to work from home and wanted to do some kind of combination. The field work that still was up and running, which is starting to change pretty rapidly, is using telehealth and phone as options. So we're doing all we can to adjust and be flexible and creative in those program areas. Once we made it through all the staffing, which really happened, yesterday, where we're starting to have a plan for each staff. Took us a couple days to kind of redo everything. Now we're looking at programs and really going back through and saying, okay, what flexibility have we been given either by the feds or the state? And that's starting to get pushed down into programs. So we're asking supervisors, how does this apply to your work? And there's several pieces of information coming from inside of our house, and I just wanted to express that to all of you about the flexibility in childcare that is starting to show up. In some of the case management has already taken effect, where we are allowed, in fact, to do video conferencing. The chair knows that we've had some issues with visitation, where you have a biological parent that wants to see their child, you have a foster parent that isn't excited about that child going out in community and possibly bringing back virus for their other children. So there's a real conflict in some of those areas. And in talking with DHS, I think they're experiencing the same thing. They can't get out ahead of the feds or out ahead of law, but we're trying to figured out on a program level now, how do we flex using technology mostly and trying to still put out essential services. So I was going to say childcare. Housing has been another one. And I will tell you, with our homelessness population, they were one of the first to say thanks, but no thanks, I don't want to meet anymore with the virus, which is interesting. But they're the most transient and the most in need, and probably carry their own set of risks, which we all know has been listed because of what they might be exposed to when they're out in the community. And so those kinds of things cause us some serious concern because we want to try to stay connected, but also safe. And so that dance is well in play right now. And I just wanted the board and Bob to know that that's what we're starting to do, is go program by program, and even that is still being kind of shifted and negotiated between ourselves and the state and the feds as has been released. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
All right. Well, we really, really appreciate all the work that the staff has done to help us through this. I think we're on the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
I think things are going to probably get worse before they get better.
Yeah.
But we couldn't get this far without the amazing staff we have here in Blue Earth County. So please thank them for all the work, from the board.
Yeah.
Because we really do appreciate the work they do.
I know that deeply. I know that, and you guys have expressed that even of late very clearly, and I certainly have shared that with staff. So I thank you, Commissioner, for saying that, and all of you, because I'm a lot of times that link between where your hearts are and what your concerns are and them, and I try to convey that very heartfelt care about our staff, our workforce, their families. You all have been very clear about that, and yet what that usually causes is when people feel supported is they want to double down and do more. And so they've always had this heart for the mission, and I really do say that they choose that when they have a choice. They'd rather not hole up, but I think we can practice smart, is what I keep saying, by using some of the technology. But I do feel, I feel it. I really believe they feel it too. The spirits have been really up in this challenge. And sometimes, we run out of gas. And so, as you said, things can get worse. And if you get bad news, or we're doing all we can and it still gets worse, that can be discouraging. So I'm not being blind or naive to that. On the other hand, I think spirits are up, and they take this as a professional challenge, and they want to serve you all well and this community well. So it comes around. Thank you very much for that.
Well, and make sure we take care of our staff.
Yeah. Because
with the stress levels, with their children being home and them working even from home, there are stress levels that they have that we don't know about.
Right.
So let's make sure that we do take care of our staff and look for their needs.
Thank you, Commissioner. All commissioners. I will say, I'm sure it's true for you all too. You usually go home on the weekend and try to reload a little bit, and the weekends have been harder, because you start to see what's coming. You have all these things, and so the emails that fly during the weekends are a little bit more strategic, but they take a lot more thought, and you just don't get a break. And so the fatigue factor is really important, and I think all staff are feeling that as well. So thank you all very much. I mean that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, Phil.
All right, Bob, I think we're down to human resources.
Well, Mr. Chair, just maybe a follow-up on some of those comments. I would encourage anyone, either on the phone or watching this on our video, to check our website frequently. We are updating a list of services that are available and trying to keep that as up-to-date as possible in terms of what services still are available to the community, either through phone or email or drop-off sorts of arrangements. So we'll be expanding that list as we get a little more time to kind of zero in on some of these changes that Mr. Clausen was just talking about. Getting back to the agenda, though, the next item is the Human Resources agenda, which is at tab 4 in your packet. We just have informational items for the board this morning. We have filled a medium equipment operator in our Public Works Department, as well as a custody officer in the jail. And then we had a lateral transfer of a social worker to a jail case manager. That was a new position that was authorized by the board. So I'll be happy to answer any questions the board might have on the Human Resources agenda.
No questions, Frank.
Questions?
All right, next item, number 5, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, is 3-2 liquor license renewals. We have requested 2 facilities for these licenses, Cato Cycle Club for an on-sale license, as well as Perry Bach Saloon for an on- and off-sale license. And so those licenses have been reviewed by the county attorney and the sheriff, and so we're recommending approval.
Will Purvis moves approval.
Second. Mark People, second.
Jesse, could you call the roll?
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Purvis?
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder?
Aye.
Chair Stuber?
Aye. That passes.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, item number 6 in your packet then is the South Central Workforce Development Joint Powers Agreement. This is an agreement that we've had in place for many years, and there's just been some minor wording changes that have been incorporated into this draft. The agreement is effective from July 1st of 2020 through June 30th of 2024, and again, staff are recommending approval of this Joint Powers Agreement.
Brunder moves approval.
People, second.
Got a motion and a second. Jesse, could you call the roll?
Can I ask a question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You're right.
Do you know how the workforce center is working right now? Is it electronically? Are people calling in? I know computers are there, and maybe the staff is there. I have no idea. I was kind of curious if anybody knows.
I have not heard specifically about the center.
Well, when this broke, we had a South Central Workforce meeting and an MVAC meeting that same day.
Okay.
The staff was already spooling up to do from home work as much as they could. I did get a text message from Amanda Mackey this morning from MVAC. They have closed the office. Well, they've closed the office a week ago already, but they are moving everyone out that they can and only essential people in there. So haven't gotten anything from the Workforce Center, but would have been a week ago Monday. They were already spooling up to be working from home and trying to deal with that, and they're not seeing people face to face.
I think that's really good. I was just curious because I know how crowded that workforce center can get.
Well, I shouldn't speak for the Workforce Center. I'm talking for the
MVAC.
But at that point, MVAC and the South Central Workforce, their office with MVAC. But the Workforce Center, the report they gave us was they were already doing limited interviews with the public a week ago Monday. So.
Thank you, Kip.
Yep.
Any other discussion? No other discussion. Jesse, could you call the roll?
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Purvis?
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder?
Aye.
Chair Stuber?
Aye. That passes. We'll go on to the resolution adopting the Blue Earth County All Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Well, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, item number 7 in your packet is that resolution. This is a resolution being brought forward by the emergency management team. They have had a couple of public meetings for city and township officials to contribute their information to this hazard mitigation plan. And so we're kind of at that final step. We're bringing forward a resolution for board adoption to approve this plan, and staff are recommending approval here today.
I'll move approval. Landcamer?
People, second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? Jesse, could you call the roll?
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Purvis?
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder?
Aye.
Chair Stuber?
Aye. And that passes.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner, the last item is a ditch balance resolution. This is something we do annually for those drainage ditches that have deficit balances. We do need a resolution passed by the board to cover those deficits with existing funds and to charge interest to those accounts. You'll see that the total deficit balance is just slightly over $1 million in those ditch accounts. We continue to work annually to try and avoid this situation, but the nature of drainage ditch improvements and repairs is such that the expense often comes all at once, where the revenue then is collected over time. And so we're asking board approval here today.
Brunder moves approval. Purvis seconds.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? With no discussion, Jesse, could you call the roll?
Commissioner Langier?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Purvis?
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder?
Aye.
Chair Stuber?
Aye. And that passes. And it looks to me like we are down to commissioner reports. Mark, would you like to start?
Okay. Yeah, interesting to say the least. I guess a few things in the beginning, and then it fell off rather rapidly because of our situation. March 10th, I did after we had our board meeting, but there was the Greater Mankato Growth Annual Meeting at MSU. I went to that. And then on March 11th, Kip and I, our MICA meeting up in St. Paul. And March 12th in Eagle Lake, we did have a fine meal in the group for mayors and clerks. And March 13th, that Friday, we did have our joint policy and tech with Gaburba at Blue Earth River. And March 17th, we did have a work session. And the 18th, emergency meeting of our board. And that was all I have for my report, Mr. Chair.
Will?
Okay, mine is relatively short also. Met mayors and clerks in Eagle Lake, as Bart mentioned, and the work session on the 17th and the emergency board meeting on the 18th. I've had several meetings canceled, which I'm sure you all have, and conducted a little business on phone conference calls.
Commissioner Brunder.
My report is also about the same, Mr. Chair. After our board meeting, Mark and I were up at MICA and had a good conversation. They're obviously, at that point, they were getting spooled up to do some more lobbying and work, but that has laid off since then. At the mayors and clerks meeting, we got to hear from Abdi from the school district, which he had a good program for us. I thought that went really well. And then that following Monday, we had several meetings with MRCI, MVAC, and South Central Workforce, which I talked a little bit about South Central Workforce and MVAC already. But MRCI was in the process of deciding whether or not they should close that Monday. We had an executive meeting, and we called an emergency board meeting the next day by conference call, and decided to close MRCI on that Wednesday morning. So with that, as just like everyone else, a lot of conference calls, discussion with the administration here at the county, and trying to deal with all the stuff going on. And I would just extend a thank you to the staff. They've been doing a great job keeping us all in the loop. And I drove through the parking lot this morning over at Health and Human Services, our building over there, and a lot of cars in the parking lot, so people are dedicated, and it looks like people are still coming, and I appreciate that. So that's my report, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Lancaster.
Mine's really light also. Mine has been primarily conference calls. I sit on the State Health Advisory Committee, so we had a call last Friday. And actually what happened after that was pretty much well said. Everything that the commissioner had said. I think we're really lucky to have Commissioner Malcolm in that position. She's got a lot of experience, and I think the administration's doing a great job. we're in uncertain times, and that's challenging. This weekend, I spent most of my time dealing with Congress and AMC as they work on their emergency supplementals. Hopefully they'll come to consensus there. And that's all I have.
Seems like we're all rather short. And
Yeah.
this is the age that we're living in right now. All our meetings are canceled, and I know I was supposed to have a very busy March, and I have a lot more work out in my garage. Starting on the 11th, I had a corrections advisory board, and then we had a meeting with Commissioner Brunder, Bob, and our county attorney, Pat McDermott, on outside counsel. I then had a call in on preparing local government for the COVID-19. Go figure, that was on the 12th. And then we had a department head meeting on Monday, the 16th, just in reference to the COVID-19. We had our work session the next day, and that was the day I signed the emergency document for Blue Earth County. On the 18th, we had another emergency meeting of the Blue Earth County Board, and we voted on that, and we passed that. And I've had daily calls with Bob Meyer, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, just to keep in line with what's going on and how we can help. Again, I will tell people how lucky they are that they're in a county that really cares. We're doing absolutely everything we can to make things go as well as we can. These are, as Commissioner Landcamer said, uncertain times. And this is something that we have in Blue Earth County, in the state of Minnesota, and the United States has never gone through. So if we make a few mistakes, please understand that, but we're not doing it because we want to hurt anybody. We're trying to do it just to get things the best for the county and the state of Minnesota and the United States as a whole. We're all in this together. I would ask people to stay inside unless you absolutely need to go somewhere. Don't. We don't know where Governor Walz is going to go with this. It could be today, it could be next week, but I would expect that sometime that we'll have the same state requirements, as I think it's up to 14 or 15 states now.
I know Wisconsin did it yesterday.
So that are going to have a state law requiring us to stay inside. But let's make it easy on everybody and just start doing it right away. I thank everybody, and I would call for an adjournment.
Second. People.
I got a motion and a second. Jesse, can you call the roll?
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Purvis?
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder?
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg?
Aye, and this meeting is adjourned.